All right, so I don't mean to beat a dead horse on all of these residency and scramble videos, but after reading through some of your comments, I realized that I don't have a video on my personal tips and advice to those who didn't match. So in this video, I want to share 13 of my own personal tips and advice I want to offer to you guys who are partaking in phase 2 or the scramble. First off, I want to say that if you didn't match, don't beat yourself up. Shameless plug, I have a whole video that talks about that. I'll share that up here. Don't watch it yet, watch it after this video. But I have a whole video that talks about how not matching doesn't define you. Secondly, I didn't match either, so I get it. But this video isn't really meant to talk about all of that. This video is more so to give you guys some practical, maybe like some tangible advice that you can use while you're going through this process. Third, I wanted to share some ASHP match statistics in this video. However, it looks like, I just pulled them up, they took them down to do some reorganizing. So it looked like they were merging the pharmacy match website with the other medical professions. So that was kind of cool. But I did happen to pull them up when they were first posted. And I don't remember the exact numbers, but I believe what I saw was somewhere around 1,800. It was a little lower than that, I'm just rounding up. Around 1,800 unmatched applicants. It's a lot of people out there. And there were about 220 unmatched spots. So it's not the best numbers, but certainly better than 2017. 2017 statistics are still posted. There were like 1,700 unmatched applicants fighting for 21 spots. You heard that right. That's not a lot. And then the match rate was, I believe, like 65%. It was lower than 2017. But similar to other years, always around 60-ish%. Lastly, I did want to mention that ASHP has resources for those of you who are partaking in phase 2. I finally had a chance to read through them. They're kind of like testimonials of those who partook in phase 2 in the past. And they offer very, very great insight and advice. Definitely check them out if you haven't already. They're fabulous. Very well worth your time to read and check out. So with that said, I'll kind of jump down into my 13 tips. The first one is pretty straightforward. It's just to be positive. It's way harder said than done, but you know, being positive in general will go a long ways in making this whole process a lot better, not only for you, but for individuals that are involved in the process. The second tip would be to take a break from the scramble. You know, you guys are probably all heads down, working hard, researching programs, and doing all this, and balancing classes and rotations, whatever else you might be doing. You know, it's a lot. Make sure you give yourself that mental break from this entire crazy, nerve-wracking process. The third tip, which I think is really, really important, is to find a supportive group. Family, friends, forums. So me personally, I posted that I didn't match on Facebook and I got an outpouring of support from friends. That was great. And then there are a lot of friends that, you know, because of that came over, called me, messaged me, and gave me a lot of encouragement and supported me. I wouldn't have made it through the process without them. With that, I also heavily utilize student doctor forums, which I'm sure many of you guys are familiar with. That forum, there's a lot of individuals, 1,800 applicants that didn't go unmatched. There's a lot of them that are probably on that site and going through the exact same emotions you are. So, you know, being surrounded with individuals who are in that same boat means they understand you, you guys understand what you're going through. And for me personally, when there was a thread that was started for all those who didn't match, and we're talking about, you know, what are you guys doing, how are you handling it, everyone's just very encouraging and supportive to each other. And I found that environment very helpful mentally to myself, and then also they gave a lot of practical advice, such as some of the ones I'm sharing with you now. But definitely do that. Find yourself a supportive group. So tip number 4 is update your CV. When you applied to phase 1, you obviously applied, you know, in the December, January timeframe, and now it's like March. So you probably had some rotations, maybe you did a presentation or poster presentation or published an article. Whatever you did, you know, you probably want to reflect that in your CV. You want to add more things that you've done to your CV. And certainly if you did something super amazing, you want to add that on there so that's taken into consideration when applying to phase 2 or the scramble. So definitely update your CV with that if you haven't already. Tip number 5, update your letter of intent. Mainly just updating like which program you're applying to, and then the name of the file if that's something you did. So usually when I apply to certain places, I would save the name of the file as, my name _ CV _ XYZ program, just to make it more personal to that program. So if you did that, definitely make sure you change the name of that as well. So tip number 6 is to communicate with your rec writers. So the first thing is let them know early. So phase 2 is obviously way shorter of a time period than phase 1. So you want to give them ample time and lead time to write that rec letter for you, especially if they tailored the letters in any way. With that said, be sure to thank them in any way you can. Some form of gratitude. If you have some money to spend, maybe buy them a nice little gift, box of chocolates or something like that. If you don't, saying thank you, a handwritten letter, an email, whatever it may be, make sure you express some form of gratitude towards them. Another thing to consider here, which I think is good practical advice, is being on the other side, evaluating individuals for residency programs. Rec letters mean a lot. So does letter of intent, of course. But for rec letters, if someone didn't highly recommend someone, I would think about that. I was like, maybe let's put it this way. I would be more likely to grant someone an interview who had, glowing recommendations from all the rec writers versus someone who maybe had 2 out of 3, and that third one was like, maybe, So with that said, some things to consider here is if one of the most recent rotations you did, you excelled on, you did very great on, maybe you can ask that preceptor to write you a new letter of rec. And that might serve you better than one where you just needed a rec letter and you didn't do so well in that rotation. So something to consider, you might want to swap around some of your references. In addition, for those of you who are probably like overachievers and got more than the minimum requirement, probably have like 4, 5, 6 different rec letter writers, but most residency programs limited to like probably 3 or 4. Consider swapping some of them out. Maybe you thought one preceptor wrote you a great one, but on hindsight, you're like, maybe they didn't. So something to consider is maybe just swapping that out for another one when applying for phase 2. So for number 7, it's just to be open-minded when applying to programs. So as opposed to phase 1, where you might have set like this huge checklist of all these things that programs need to have for you to even apply, be more open-minded in phase 2. So one of the number 1 things and most important factors, and I think it's published as well, is geographic limitations. The majority of programs, unless you're very lucky, are likely to be out of state. And I know that's a limiting factor, and it's just like an absolute, you can't or you won't move to an out of state because of XYZ reasons. And in many cases, it's a make or break. You just can't. But if there is some wiggle room, consider this. Maybe change your perspective and say, hey, I'm only going to do this for a year. Maybe this is something I want to do. If you truly want this residency and you're truly wanting to get this done, maybe that 1 year is not that bad. So maybe change your mindset in that case. Obviously, if there's other factors that you absolutely cannot, then you can't. But something to consider. The other thing is like other things on your checklist. Maybe you didn't apply to a program because of the class size. It wasn't large enough for you, or it wasn't small enough for you, or they didn't offer you a rotation in something you wanted. I truly believe that it's not really the program that will define your experience. It's more so you. What you do on that program will make a difference. And for example, if they don't offer a rotation that you're interested in, create it. Work with the director to see if you can partner with maybe another hospital or maybe even within the institution to see if there's a way you can get that experience at your site. For me, certainly that's something that I did as well. For example, at my PGY2 site, I really wanted a rotation on reporting and analytics, and it didn't exist. So I worked with the reporting team at our institution to pilot that rotation. So just keep that in mind, be open-minded. Even if a program doesn't meet all the items on your checklist, certain things can be, tweaked, or you can make certain things happen. Just something to consider. Tip number 8 is more so like an FYI. It might get a little expensive, especially as a pharmacy student. So this is just like to have that mental preparation that I might be shelling out some moolah here. In my case, I applied to, I think, probably 12 or 13 programs, and I had to spend about $200 to $300 on applications just to apply. So that's a lot of money. And then you might have to like fly out to programs to interview. That's a lot of money. Hotels, food, all of that. Lots of money. So just be mentally prepared that you might be spending a lot of money partaking in the phase 2 or scramble process. All right, and then tip number 9, be confident but not arrogant. So my thought here is that many of you guys probably aren't going to be arrogant anyways. Your confidence is probably shattered, so you're probably less likely to be arrogant and you're less likely to be confident. I want to emphasize here is to be as confident as possible. So the thing to keep in mind here is that there are many reasons why someone might not match. And in this case, for pharmacy, there just aren't enough positions. So you're intelligent, you're ambitious, you're determined. Keep that mentality, keep that mindset while you go on to do these phone interviews or on-site interviews. Be confident. You know your stuff. You prepared throughout the last 4 years, or maybe the last year, if you're procrastinating, for these residencies. You can do it. So you have to believe in yourself that you can do it. And I know for me personally, I was shattered. I was not confident in myself. But I changed my mentality when I was going into the phone interviews and going into on-site interviews to say, hey, I can do this. I know my stuff. And I try to reflect that confidence when I interviewed. I think it goes a long way. The reason why I say that is from a program perspective, and this is just anecdotal, I should probably say that as a disclaimer. Anecdotally, from a program perspective, we're more likely to go unmatched and not rank an applicant if they're just like completely unconfident in their own skills. And it shows, those kind of things show. So really important. It's a mindset thing. Be confident in yourself when you go on interviews. Tip number 10, I don't even know why I put this in here, but I thought I'd just say it just in case. Make sure you research the programs. There's probably going to be a lot of programs you apply to. If you're like me, research them. Make sure you do. Time frame is very short. I understand that. Make sure you research the programs. Do the best. Just FYI. You guys probably are doing it already. I just thought I'd mention it. Tip number 11, be early on everything. Applying, researching, communicating, submitting your apps, submitting your rank list. Be early. And I'll give you guys an example of why this is important. One of the programs that I talked to closed their applications like on the 2nd or 3rd day. So there's like all this time frame. There's a long time frame. It sounds like it's great. We have all this time to like submit your rank list and all that stuff. Programs might close and they might not be open for you to even apply after a certain time or rank them. I'm not using the terms correctly, but basically programs might close, and it's important that you open dialogue with them, apply early, get your application in so you're considered. But basically that program closed on day 2 or 3 because they received over 100 applications for one spot. They just could not handle all of that. They're getting bombarded with phone calls, emails, and all these applications. You can't review that much in that short time frame. So apply early. Be early in everything. Tip number 12 is to continually check that list for new programs. I don't know why, but it happened during my case, and maybe it doesn't happen anymore. But for whatever reason, new programs popped up on that list. I was checking it probably like every couple minutes, every couple hours to see what new programs existed. Just something to keep in mind. Check that list often and see what's up there. On top of that, there are many new programs and also not new, but existing programs that don't utilize the ASHP match. So they may be non-ASHP accredited residency programs, or they may be just new programs that are jumping into the scramble. Look out for them. In a lot of those cases, it's usually by word of mouth. So your faculty, your school of pharmacy, friends, colleagues, preceptors, whoever, usually they will know of those programs, especially if they work for the institution. So this will be a nice segue into the next tip, but I'll kind of end it there. look for those new programs out there, whether it's on the scramble list or phase 2 list, or it's through word of mouth. All right, so lastly, tip 13, leverage your network. Probably the most important factor of them all, I would say, is this one, because I truly believe those who find the most success in phase 2 in the scramble are those who are kind of internal candidates, which seem kind of unfair, but anecdotally, that is what I tend to believe, or what I've seen. So let me explain. My definition of an internal candidate are those who are kind of on the minds of the programs before the scramble or phase 2 even begins. So to give you a more concrete example, let's say, scramble opens or phase 2 opens, and this program gets a ton of applications. There's like 100, 200, 300 applications. I'm like, where the heck did all these people come from, right? And so they didn't apply in phase 1, so they're obviously applying because they didn't get a residency. So who would they care about more, right? And what I'm trying to get at is those internal candidates. And I was actually one of them in my experience, where if you had applied in phase 1 and you just didn't get an interview because there's only so many people a program can interview, but you were one of those who applied in phase 1, didn't get an interview, but they have a spot in phase 2 and you applied again, you would be considered an internal candidate from my perspective. And those, from a program perspective, you're more interested in those individuals because they had an interest before the scramble occurred or phase 2 occurred. So that gives you an advantage in those circumstances. Additionally, other examples of internal candidates are like if you did a rotation with that particular program. So they kind of know of you already. You're just not just some random application that just threw your name in the pot. They kind of have an idea of who you are already, and certainly in that short time frame, more than likely you may have an advantage over others who may not have those kind of relationships with preceptors or that program. And the other thing to add along with that is also word of mouth. So if you've never had contact with the program, word of mouth goes a long, long way. So if you know of someone in that program, talk to them. If they can put in a good word for you in the piles and piles of applications that the programs get, if someone can say, hey, I know that person, they're a great student, I worked with them before or whatever, that goes a long way. So those are kind of my examples of internal candidates. All right, so that's kind of it for this video. I'm gonna wrap it up here. I wish you guys the best of luck. It's gonna be a rough road ahead. Work hard, stay positive, and do the best you can. Best of luck to you guys. Harder said than done, but try your best. Rooting for you guys. I believe in you guys, so make sure you believe in yourself. All right, guys, until next time. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in and watching the video. If you like the content, definitely hit the ImproRx button over to your left to subscribe, and definitely check out more videos over here to your right. Now, as always, if you have questions, comments, and even better, suggestions for future videos, definitely let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, until next time, guys.